So next up, we're going to move into the NFL, which we were just kind of talking a little bit about. But there has been a lot of news coming out recently. The NFLPA has finally come to an agreement regarding how the players will be paid if it's a shortened season and just all sorts of other issues. We're going to go through and we're going to break down all some of the important things that we noticed in the deal. The major thing is that the salary cap for 2020 is going to be remaining the same, and they're going to be pushing the lost revenue into the following 4 years. I guess what I guess if you want to go into a little bit more detail on this, Jimmy.
Yeah, so the NFL salary cap next year will be minimum of 175 million. So that's
Mhm.
about a 20 million drop from the current year if they sustain any losses. And there's a chance they won't even sustain losses and
Right.
the salary cap could remain flat. But it's unlikely it's going to increase at the rate that would have been expected.
Mhm.
So what this means to teams is they need to be careful about how they're spending their money.
Yeah.
If they go into next year expecting the salary cap to be at a certain number and it comes back $20 million lower, they're gonna have to cut players, potentially even star players. They could have to cut a bunch of mid-level guys, a bunch of their depth.
Mhm.
Now the Lions are in a pretty good position right now. They're about $20 million under the cap, which is something they could carry over to next year.
Yeah.
But they have Galladay and Decker up for possible re-signings this year.
Mhm.
So they need to be careful how they restructure those contracts and how much they're willing to pay them so as not to get into a salary crunch next year.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be real interesting to see how teams kind of work with their cap following trying to keep it going for the next few years. And like you said, especially not just on the Lions with Kenny Galladay, but there's also players on other teams who are going to be coming up for huge extensions. And it's going to be interesting to see how it affects those players' deals as well. One other interesting fact from the agreement that came out was the opt out option for players, which they basically have until August 3rd, which is 1 week from today, to decide if they're going to be playing or they're going to opt out for the season. And once they make that decision is final. You will not be allowed back in the 2020 season at all. So, again, Jimmy, if you just want to go into the details kind of on how they're going to be paid.
Right. So there are three potential opt out options. There's the standard opt out occurring before the season, August 3rd
Mhm.
deadline, which is a $150,000 salary cap or salary advance. So it's not free money, it's going to get taken out of a future salary.
Yeah.
There's no accrued season, which hurts them if they're potentially on the fringe of getting to free agency.
Hmm.
The contract will toll. The second opt out is a higher risk medical category opt out, which is a $350,000 stipend, which is not an advance against future salary. So it sounds like that's free money. The contract will toll, and the player will receive an accrued season toward free agency and towards player benefits.
Hmm.
There is a third opt out, which is less reported. I saw it on Albert Breer's article today, which is there's a mid-season opt-out option, which is very limited. Apparently,
Hmm.
might be only if there's a family member that's very ill or something like that.
Uh,
So I don't know any more details about that one. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about the higher risk medical category opt-out. They
yeah.
listed the categories, which are cancer, chronic kidney disease, COPD, weakened immune system from solid organ transplant,
Mm.
serious heart conditions such as heart failure, coronary artery disease, or cardiomyopathies, sickle cell disease, type 2 diabetes, asthma, cerebrovascular disease, cystic fibrosis, hypertension, weakened immune system from blood or bone marrow transplant, immune deficiencies, HIV, use of corticosteroids or other immune weakening medicines, neurological conditions such as dementia, liver disease, and pulmonary fibrosis. So
So,
that's a nice big list there. The key thing to know is most all these players are young and they are extremely fit. They're
yeah.
among the most fit, healthy people on this planet.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of these high risk categories don't even apply because if they had them, they wouldn't even be playing in the NFL.
Exactly.
So the ones that do apply are number one, asthma. That's something that's a very common thing,
Mhm.
exercise induced asthma. It's pretty easily controlled, so you can be a high level athlete with it.
Mhm.
Hypertension is a possibility. Use of corticosteroids. Now, this is not performance enhancing steroids. This is a different category.
Hmm.
Corticosteroids are medications like prednisone, which decrease inflammation in the body. Some players might be on them in a chronic fashion if they're having a lot of arthritic or inflammatory issues with their body. So that's a possibility.
Yeah.
The other two are sickle cell disease and HIV, which is possible that some players have that. Now, I had been advising the NFL and the NFLPA to keep at risk or high risk language out of the deal. So they decide to go and put that in, which
Yeah.
potentially exposes them to a lot of appeals, legal battles, and doctor dissenting opinions. However, the financial benefit of high risk opting out is very low. And couple that with the fact that the risk of a player developing COVID related issues is also very low. So just that it's very unlikely players are going to take an opt out
Yeah.
option.
Yeah. One player has already chosen to opt out, and that is Laurent Duvernay Tardif. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I probably did. But yeah, he's the Chiefs offensive lineman. He is also a doctor. He has his doctorate in medicine, and he has been kind of on the front lines helping out in this COVID epidemic right now. So he has been opting out for different reasons. And I know you said you kind of had some feelings on this. In your opinion, Jimmy?
Yeah, so let's get into this a little bit. Laurent Duvernay Tardif, his
Thank
history
you.
is he graduated from McGill, which is a Canadian medical school, in 2018.
Hmm.
He has not had time to do any residency training. So that's an important thing to note.
Hmm.
On his tweet, I quote, the reason for his opt out is I cannot allow myself to potentially transmit the virus in our community simply to play the sport that I love. If I am to take risks, I will do it caring for patients. So I absolutely support his right to do what he wants and to opt out.
Of
Fully
course.
support that option, no problem. However, if this is my son, if this is my friend, I'm telling him that's a bad decision. He should stay with the NFL. Couple reasons for that. Number one is the NFL has a rigorous frequent testing program, which is not something he's going to have in regular society. So
Right.
he's going to know much sooner than otherwise if he's positive and potentially could spread it to somebody else.
Yeah.
The NFL also has many restrictions on peer activities, which we'll discuss in a little bit.
Hmm.
So he'll be better insulated in the NFL than in many other areas of life. Number two reason is how much value is he actually providing to patients here? He described working as an orderly on the front lines. Well, here's the deal. He's a medical school grad without having done residency training. He does not have the skills or capability to safely act as a physician. He also does not have the skills to act as a nurse, a medical assistant, a nurse's aide. Those are all specialist positions too that require some training.
Yeah.
You don't learn those skills in medical school.
Hmm.
You learn a baseline of knowledge that gets you prepared to develop skills to become a doctor, and he hasn't gotten there yet. So he's unlikely to be even providing that much value to patients based on his current knowledge and skill level.
Yeah.
So the number three point is if his goal is actually to decrease the spread of the virus, he'd have much more of an impact by being a visible, active player in the NFL and being a positive role model.
Mhm.
And the money he could make in the NFL could be used now or in the future to aid in his ability to care for patients. So
Yeah.
he's giving up millions of dollars here. He's getting the 300 or he's getting the $150,000 salary advance. So he's giving up millions of dollars potentially to take this year off, which that money potentially is going to be there in the future, potentially not. He's losing a year of his career.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with how his play has been over the last few years, 'cause I can't say if he's really gonna be worth a huge contract or not, or if he was going to be or what his contract even was, if he's gonna be paid that much. But yeah, again, I agree. I think you have much better and I think you have even though he's still an NFL player, I think you have a bigger voice when you're in the NFL and you're on that platform almost weekly to be able to say something or voice your opinion in any way that he'd be have more of a benefit in the NFL than he would on the front lines. And again, I didn't know any of that. I just read that he was a doctorate, had his doctorate degree, and was working on the front line. So I didn't know any of that stuff or how that actually works. So thank you for breaking all of that down for us.